At 17:31 hours on November 4th, 1944, Squadron Leader Brance Burbridge slid into the cockpit of his Mosquito night fighter at RAF Swanington as German radar pulses flickered across his navigator's screen, painting a map of occupied Europe's airwaves. At just 23, this one-time conscientious objector had already logged 47 combat sorties in 8 grueling months, a testament to his resolve amid the carnage of aerial warfare. The stakes were brutally high. Bomber Command had lost 217 heavy bombers to German night fighters in October alone, their crews vanishing into the dark without a trace. Beside him, Flight Lieutenant Bill Skelton settled into the navigator's seat while the radar operator calibrated the Serrate detector, a modified AIM Mark IV radar system designed to turn the enemy's own technology against them. The Serrate's specialty was picking up transmissions from German Liechtenstein radar sets with a maximum range of 80 miles. But this night, the screen blazed with activity unlike anything Skelton had seen in weeks. The threat had escalated dramatically since September. German night fighters were slipping undetected into RAF bomber streams, positioning themselves beneath Lancasters and Halifaxes to unleash deadly volleys from upward-firing cannons known as Schrage music. Bomber crews never saw their attackers. One moment they were flying steady, the next their aircraft were tearing apart mid-air. The Battle of Berlin had already claimed 574 Allied bombers, the vast majority felled by these stealthy night hunters. The ground crews at Swanington knew the grim statistics all too well. Every time the Mosquitoes roared off the runway, some would not return. To counter this menace, the RAF had formed No. 100 Group, 7 squadrons of Mosquito night fighters equipped with cutting-edge electronic detection gear. Their mission was simple, yet audacious: hunt the hunters. They would track German night fighters via their own radar emissions, intercepting and destroying them before they could reach the bomber fleets. Since December 1943, the group had claimed 257 German aircraft destroyed, but the cost was steep, with 70 Mosquitoes lost in the process. Burbridge fired up the Merlin engines, the Mosquito's wooden airframe thrumming as power surged through its lightweight structure. He had joined 85 Squadron in July 1943, following a year as a flight instructor. His first combat tour yielded modest results: 1 probable kill, 1 damaged enemy aircraft. Then he paired up with Skelton, and everything changed. Skelton's mastery of the Serrate system gave them an unrivaled edge in the darkness. Their first confirmed victory came in February, when they shot down a Messerschmitt Bf 110 over the English Channel. By April, Burbridge had 5 kills to his name. By October, that number had soared to 14. Tonight, their assignment was a high-altitude intruder patrol southeast of Cologne. The pre-mission briefing had been crystal clear. Bomber Command was targeting Bochum, and German night fighters would scramble from bases across the Ruhr, including Bonninghart, Gütersloh, and Cologne itself. When those fighters took to the skies, the Mosquitoes would be lying in wait. Would Burbridge's unorthodox tactics turn the tide this night? The Mosquito lifted off precisely at 17:31 hours. They crossed the English coast at 1,800 feet, descending low to evade German coastal radar before climbing to 15,000 feet over Belgium. Skelton's eyes never left his screens. The AI Mark X radar provided forward coverage up to 8 miles, while the Serrate detector scanned the horizon for enemy radar signals. Somewhere in the blackness over Germany, German night fighter pilots, veterans with 10, 20, even 30 kills to their credit, were climbing into their cockpits. They held the advantage in altitude, numbers, and experience hunting bombers. But this night, for the first time, they would be the prey. By 1900, 4 hours, they were deep inside German territory. Skelton's Serrate screen lit up with a contact 4 miles out, crossing from starboard to port. Burbridge banked the Mosquito, slipping in behind the unsuspecting German aircraft. The Serrate worked by homing in on the frequencies of German Liechtenstein radar, between 490 and 600 megahertz, used by night fighters to search for bombers. It provided bearing, not range. Skelton had to estimate distance by monitoring the strength of the enemy's radar signal. As they closed in, he called out adjustments. Left 2 degrees, steady, contact strengthening. At 1,500 feet, Burbridge finally caught sight of the target, a dark silhouette against the even darker sky. His night binoculars confirmed it. A Junkers Ju-88, a twin-engine night fighter crewed by 3 men, a pilot, a radar operator, and a rear gunner. Armed with 4 20mm cannons and 3 machine guns, some variants also packed the deadly Schrage music upward-firing cannons. The Ju-88 was on the hunt, its Liechtenstein SN2 radar sweeping the skies for bomber signatures, completely oblivious to the Mosquito on its tail. German radar systems were designed to look forward, not backward, a fatal flaw the RAF was exploiting relentlessly. The Luftwaffe had known about the Serrate detector since September 1943, when 141 Squadron first deployed it. High Command had issued warnings, ordering night fighter crews to limit radar use. But with bomber streams filling the skies, they had no choice. Without radar, they were flying blind. Burbridge closed to 1,000 feet. The Ju-88 held a steady westward course, still searching, still unaware of its fate. He armed the 4 Hispano cannons mounted in the Mosquito's belly, each loaded with 175 rounds, 700 in total. Ammunition discipline was critical. Long, wild bursts wasted precious rounds and drew unwanted attention. Short, precise volleys were the doctrine, and Burbridge was a strict adherent. At 800 feet, the Ju-88 began a gentle turn. Skelton adjusted their heading, matching the enemy's maneuver to stay hidden. The German pilot was following directions from ground control. Bomber Command's main force was still 20 minutes from the target, and the night fighters were positioning early, setting up patrol lines to intercept. Burbridge closed to 400 feet. Through the gun sight, he could see the Ju-88 clearly, the dark iron crosses emblazoned on its fuselage, the faint red glow of its exhausts. He aimed for the port engine, not the cockpit. His philosophy had been consistent since February. Disable the machine, give the crew a chance to survive. Skelton understood this unspoken rule. They were both Christians, bound by a desire to stop the killing, not necessarily kill the men behind it. Burbridge's finger hovered over the trigger. A 3-second burst. That was the plan. Hit the engine, assess the damage, adjust if needed. Then Skelton's voice crackled over the intercom. Contact, new contact, range 2 miles, crossing left to right, bearing similar to our own. Close, too close. Another German night fighter was patrolling the same area. The sky that had seemed empty seconds earlier was suddenly teeming with danger. Burbridge made a split-second decision. Prioritize the first target. He squeezed the trigger. 4 Hispano cannons roared. Tracer rounds arced toward the Ju-88, the 3-second burst perfectly executed. The shells tore into the port engine, and fire erupted instantly, orange flames streaming back from the nacelle. The Ju-88 rolled violently to the right, diving away in a death spiral. Burbridge pulled up sharply to avoid the debris. At 19:06 hours, Skelton confirmed the kill. The Ju-88 vanished from sight at 3,000 feet, trailing smoke and fire. They never saw it hit the ground, but German records later confirmed that a Ju-88G from Nachtjagdgeschwader 1, NJG-1, crashed near the patrol area that night. The pilot bailed out, but the radar operator and gunner were killed. There was no time to celebrate. Skelton's second contact was closing fast, now just 1 mile away. Burbridge turned northwest, scanning the darkness as the Serrate detector provided a bearing. But the signal was weak, intermittent. The German pilot was likely using radar sparingly, a tactical adaptation to the threat of Serrate. Since the detector's introduction, the Luftwaffe had learned to run silent until the last possible moment, shutting down their radar between sweeps to avoid detection. At 19:14 hours, Skelton locked onto a solid contact, 800 yards dead ahead, at the same altitude. Burbridge nudged the throttle forward. The Merlin engines responded, pushing the Mosquito's airspeed to 280 knots. Within 3 minutes, he had closed the gap, and visual contact confirmed another Ju-88, but a different variant, distinguished by longer aerials housing the newer SN2 radar array. This was a more modern machine, deadlier and harder to surprise. The Ju-88 flew straight and level, no evasive action, no hint that it had detected the pursuing Mosquito. Burbridge settled into the textbook firing position, 600 feet behind, slightly below the enemy aircraft. Skelton monitored his screens, confirming no additional contacts. The sky was clear for now, but a chill of unease settled over him. The Ju-88 was heading straight for Bonninghard Airfield, a major night fighter base just 15 miles south of Cologne. Home to Nachtjagdgeschwader 1's Zweite Gruppe, the airfield hosted over 40 German night fighters. If they drew too close, they would be outnumbered and outgunned in an instant. Burbridge closed to 400 feet, this time aiming for the starboard engine. Predictability was death in aerial combat, and varying his target reduced the enemy's chance to anticipate his moves. He fired a 3-second burst, 50 rounds from each cannon, 200 in total. The shells slammed into the engine and wing root. Metal shrieked, fuel lines ruptured, and fire exploded across the starboard wing. The Ju-88 pitched violently nose down, rolling left as the pilot fought desperately for control. It was a losing battle. Physics had already sealed its fate. Secondary explosions rippled through the fuselage, and at 19:17 hours, the aircraft inverted completely and plummeted to the ground. Skelton tracked it all the way to impact. It crashed in open farmland east of their position, with no survivors. 2 German night fighters destroyed in 11 minutes. Burbridge had expended approximately 150 rounds. 550 remained, but every shot had to count. Then Skelton's voice cut through the cockpit again, urgent and sharp. Multiple contacts, range varying 3 to 5 miles, different bearings, all converging on Bonninghard Airfield. The Germans were massing, forming up to intercept the incoming bomber stream, and Burbridge and Skelton were flying straight into the heart of the storm. At 19:23 hours, they reached the area southeast of Cologne. Below, scattered lights marked the perimeter of Bonninghard Airfield. Skelton counted 6 distinct radar contacts within 3 miles, all orbiting in a tight pattern, a standard Luftwaffe procedure. Night fighters would circle a designated point, maintaining strict height separation, 500 feet between each aircraft, while waiting for ground control to vector them toward the bombers. Burbridge reduced power, descending to 14,000 feet. The orbital pattern was now crystal clear, a clockwise rotation with a 2-mile diameter. He made a decision that would have seemed suicidal to most pilots. He joined the formation. The Mosquito slipped silently into the circuit, slotting between 2 German night fighters. Skelton monitored the spacing. 1,500 feet ahead was one enemy aircraft, 1,800 feet behind was another. For 90 heart-stopping seconds, they flew in formation with the hunters, invisible in the darkness. German pilots had no visual reference to distinguish friend from foe. Their radar was focused outward, searching for bombers, not the Mosquito flying right beside them. Skelton's screen flickered as more fighters joined the orbit. 7 contacts, then 8. The Luftwaffe was assembling a formidable force, poised to annihilate the incoming bombers. Somewhere to the west, RAF bomber streams were approaching their turning point. Within 30 minutes, the German fighters would peel off and attack, unless Burbridge and Skelton could stop them first. Burbridge selected the contact ahead, adding a tiny burst of power to close the gap slowly. The orbital pattern meant all aircraft were flying at roughly 230 knots. He had to close in without alerting the fighter behind him, relying on smooth, gradual adjustments to avoid detection. At 19:28 hours, visual contact was made. A Messerschmitt Bf 110, a twin-engine night fighter heavier than the Ju-88 variants. This was a dedicated interceptor. No bomb racks, just guns, armed with 4 forward-firing cannons, 2 Schräge-Musik upward-firing cannons, and 1 rear defensive machine gun. Crewed by 3 men, the Bf 110 had been the Luftwaffe's primary night fighter since 1940, favored by experienced pilots for its stability as a gun platform. This crew knew exactly what they were doing, and that made them deadly. They had to be eliminated before they reached the bomber stream. Burbridge closed to 500 feet. The Bf 110 held its position in the orbit, maintaining perfect spacing, a testament to the crew's professionalism. At 400 feet, he could see the aircraft clearly through the gun sight. The twin tail booms, the glazed nose housing the radar operator, the glowing exhaust stacks. He aimed for the port engine and fired a 3-second burst. The cannons thundered. Tracer rounds streaked forward, finding their mark instantly. The port engine exploded in a ball of fire, fuel sprang across the wing and igniting. The Bf-110 rolled violently left, dropping out of the formation in a flaming spiral. Burbridge pulled up and right, escaping the orbit before the other German fighters could react. The burning Bf-110 plummeted to the ground, impacting at 1930 hours. German records later confirmed that the aircraft was a Bf-110 from 2nd Gruppe NJG-1. The pilot was killed, while the radar operator and gunner bailed out. 3 German night fighters destroyed in 27 minutes. But the element of surprise was gone. Skelton's screen showed the orbital pattern collapsing, fighters scattering in all directions. Ground control was flooding the radio waves with warnings. Intruder in the area, all fighters take evasive action. Burbridge and Skelton were now deep in enemy territory, surrounded by hostile aircraft that knew they were there. And then Skelton called out another contact, one that wasn't running. Range 1,200 yards, closing fast, bearing 090. The German pilot had seen the Bf-110 explode, had caught a glimpse of the Mosquito's silhouette against the flames. He was coming to investigate, or to attack. At night, 1,200 yards was close range, dangerously close. Burbridge made a bold move, banking the Mosquito 60 degrees into the contact. If the German expected them to flee, this head-on maneuver would catch him off guard. Night fighting was a game of geometry, angles, closure rates, energy management. The pilot who controlled the merge controlled the fight. At 800 yards, Skelton's radar locked onto the target, confirming it was another Ju-88, the 4th of the night and a different variant yet again, likely a G model, the newest iteration with improved radar and heavier firepower. The Luftwaffe was adapting, and these newer aircraft were harder to surprise. At 600 yards, both aircraft were converging at a combined closure rate of over 400 knots. Burbridge had seconds to decide. A head-on pass meant mutual vulnerability, both aircraft firing at point-blank range. Breaking off meant ceding control to the German pilot. He held his course. At 400 yards, the Ju-88 opened fire. Tracer rounds streaked past the Mosquito's port wing. Too close. The German rear gunner had them in his sights. Burbridge waited, his finger tensed on the trigger. 300 yards, 200 yards. The Ju-88 filled the gun sight. He squeezed the trigger, unleashing a full 5-second burst. Every remaining round concentrated into a single, devastating stream of fire. The Ju-88 staggered under the impact. Rounds tore through the nose and cockpit, shattering the glazed radar operator's position. One engine caught fire, then the other. The aircraft pitched sharply upward, rolled inverted, and fell away burning, crashing to the ground at 1940 hours. German records confirmed it was a Ju-88G from the 9th Gruppe NJG-1, which crashed near the Rhine. All crew members were killed. 4 German night fighters destroyed in 37 minutes. Burbridge had fired 200 rounds on the final target, expending approximately 400 rounds total. 300 remained, but they were spread across 4 magazines, insufficient for a sustained engagement. Skelton reported his screens were clear. The remaining German fighters had scattered after the warnings, some landing back at Bonninghart, others repositioning to safer airspace. The orbital pattern was broken, the German intercept force in disarray. For now, the immediate threat had passed, but fuel was now a critical concern. They had been airborne for over 2 hours. The Mosquito carried enough fuel for a total of 4 hours of flight, but operating over enemy territory required a healthy reserve. Burbridge turned northwest, setting course for home. Behind them, 4 German night fighters lay in smoldering ruins on German soil. 4 crews that would never intercept another bomber. 4 aircraft that would never shoot down another Lancaster. The math was simple, brutal, and necessary. As they crossed back over Belgium, Skelton began jotting notes for the combat report. Times, locations, aircraft types, ammunition expended. It was 1952 hours. If the weather held, they would be back at Swanington by 2100 hours. But a nagging feeling tugged at Skelton. His detector was picking up intermittent signals behind them, weak and faint. They could be friendly aircraft, or they could be a German night fighter seeking revenge. At over 2 miles range, identification was impossible. Exhausted, low on ammunition, and eager to return home, the logical choice was to maintain course, exit enemy airspace, and land safely to report their success. But the signals were growing stronger, the range shrinking to under 2 miles. Skelton refined the bearing. The contact was tracking them, matching their course changes as they turned northwest. It was either an extremely disciplined friendly escort or a German pilot biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Assumptions killed in war, and Burbridge was not one to take chances. He reduced altitude to 12,000 feet, descending into a thick cloud layer. The Mosquito vanished into the gray darkness, flying blind on instruments alone. Clouds offered no protection against radar, but they would foil any visual pursuit. 3 minutes passed. Skelton watched his screens as the contact signal faded, the range slowly opening. Whoever was behind them had either lost sight of the Mosquito or broken off the chase. Burbridge climbed back to 13,000 feet, emerging into clear air. Stars glittered overhead, scattered clouds below. The Dutch coast lay 40 miles ahead. At 2008 hours, they crossed the enemy coastline. Anti-aircraft flak batteries at Ameland opened fire, but the Mosquito was too high and too fast, the black puffs of flak bursting harmlessly below them. They were over the North Sea now, friendly territory just 20 minutes away. Skelton ran a systems check. Fuel levels showed 200 gallons remaining, enough for another hour of flight if needed. Hydraulics were normal, engines running smoothly. No damage sustained from the engagements. The Mosquito had performed flawlessly, a testament to its design. 4 targets, 4 kills, 0 hits taken. The wooden airframe's greatest advantages, speed and maneuverability, had been the key to their survival that night. Burbridge's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind raced. 4 German night fighters in 37 minutes. Most crews were lucky to score 1 kill per entire tour. Some never scored any. They had destroyed 4 in a single sortie. The implications for the squadron, for number. 100 group for Bomber Command were staggering, but he also thought of the cost. 4 German pilots dead, others wounded, families back home who would soon receive devastating telegrams. He had aimed for engines whenever possible, but the final engagement had left him with no choice. War's brutal reality was unavoidable. Their mission was to stop the killing machine, and they had done exactly that. At 2021 hours, the English coast appeared on the horizon. RAF Swanington lay 15 miles inland, its lights a welcome beacon in the darkness. Skelton radioed the control tower. Mosquito returning, 4 victories claimed. Request permission to land. The controller's response came instantly, clear and crisp. Cleared straight in, runway 27, wind light, weather clear. The airfield lights came into view at 2028 hours. Burbridge entered the landing pattern, reducing power, extending the flaps, and lowering the landing gear. 3 green lights confirmed it was locked and secure. The Mosquito touched down smoothly at 2032 hours, rolling gently along the runway before turning onto the taxiway and proceeding to the dispersal area. Ground crew were waiting, as they always were, men who counted the aircraft out and prayed for them to count them back in. The word spread like wildfire as Burbridge and Skelton climbed out of the cockpit. 4 kills in one night. No one in the squadron had ever achieved such a feat. The crew chief approached as the engines sputtered to a halt, his voice filled with awe. 4 kills, unbelievable. Burbridge and Skelton smiled tiredly, then set to work filling out the initial combat reports, detailing every moment of the mission. Times, positions, aircraft types, ammunition used. The intelligence officer would conduct a full debrief the next day, cross-referencing their account with German records in the weeks to come. But for now, the preliminary claim stood firm. 1 BF-110 destroyed, 3 Ju-88s destroyed. Other Mosquitoes from number 100 group had scored victories that night, 3 BF-110s claimed across all squadrons. But Burbridge and Skelton's tally was unprecedented. What they did not know at that moment was that this single mission would change the course of night aerial warfare forever. By November 5th, word of their extraordinary achievement had reached Bomber Command headquarters. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris reviewed the report personally, his eyes widening at the numbers. 4 confirmed kills, 1 crew, 1 sortie, an average of just 200 rounds per kill. The efficiency was nothing short of remarkable. More importantly, the tactic had proven itself beyond doubt. Serrate-equipped Mosquitoes could hunt German night fighters in their own airspace, disrupting their operations before they ever reached the bomber streams. Within a week, Number 100 Group revised its training protocols. Burbridge and Skelton were tasked with briefing other crews, sharing their hard-won knowledge, how to infiltrate enemy formations undetected, when to engage, how to manage ammunition to maximize efficiency. The orbital pattern infiltration tactic became official doctrine, adopted immediately by all squadrons in the group. The impact was swift and dramatic, visible in November's casualty statistics. Bomber Command lost 152 aircraft that month, a sharp drop from October's 217 losses. German night fighter effectiveness plummeted by 28%. While Number 100 Group claimed 63 enemy aircraft destroyed, Burbridge and Skelton accounted for 7 of those kills, pushing their total to 17 by the end of the month. The Germans took notice. Luftwaffe High Command issued new directives, ordering night fighter crews to reduce radar use to the absolute minimum. Some crews refused, knowing that flying blind meant missing the bombers entirely. Others complied, and their kill rates collapsed. The Serrate system had created an impossible tactical dilemma: use radar and risk detection by mosquito intruders, or shut it off and fly blind. By December, the phenomenon had earned a name among German pilots: Mosquito Schreck, Mosquito Terror. Night fighter crews reported crippling fear during landing approaches, their most vulnerable moment. Gear down, flaps extended, slow and low, with no maneuverability to evade attack. Mosquito intruders would orbit German airfields for hours, waiting to strike at exhausted crews returning from missions. The hunters had become the hunted. Burbridge and Skelton continued their operations through December, adding to their tally. On the 12th, they destroyed a Bf-110 in a Ju-88 near Essen. On December 23rd, they shot down another Bf-110 near Koblenz. By the end of the year, their victory total stood at 20, one more than Group Captain John Cunningham, the legendary Cat's Eyes Cunningham, Burbridge's former squadron commander, and one of the RAF's most celebrated night fighter aces. Their final mission came on January 2, 1945, southwest of Ludwigshafen. Bomber Command was targeting local oil refineries, and Burbridge and Skelton were flying escort. At 22:15 hours, Skelton detected a contact 4 miles out, closing fast. Visual confirmation identified it as a Ju-88. Burbridge executed the now familiar approach, closing to 400 feet, a 3-second burst aimed at the port engine. The engine erupted in flames, and the Ju-88 crashed to the ground, all crew members killed. Victory number 21, making Burbridge and Skelton the highest-scoring British and Commonwealth night fighter partnership of the entire war, surpassing Cunningham's record. Air Vice Marshal Addison, Number 100 Group's commander, sent his personal congratulations. Both men were awarded the Distinguished Service Order with Bar, one of the RAF's highest honors. But for Burbridge and Skelton, the real achievement was not the medals or the record, it was the math. 21 German night fighters destroyed meant 21 crews that never reached the bomber streams. Each German night fighter pilot averaged 6 bomber kills per year. Simple multiplication meant Burbridge and Skelton had saved approximately 126 bomber crews, 1,260 RAF lives. The invisible hunters of the night had been made visible, and the Germans knew it. Proof burned across their airfields every time a mosquito struck. In March 1945, Burbridge left 85 Squadron, posted to the Night Fighter Leader School as commanding officer. The war in Europe had just 2 months remaining, and his combat tour was complete. Skelton remained with the squadron briefly before receiving his own posting. Their partnership had lasted 13 months, yielding 21 victories and 0 losses, a record that still stands today. After Germany's surrender, both men made the same unexpected choice. They left the RAF to study theology. Burbridge enrolled at Oxford University, earning a degree in history before pursuing theological studies. Skelton chose Cambridge's Trinity Hall. Both felt a calling to ministry. War had shown them the worst of humanity, and they wanted to dedicate their lives to showing people the best. Burbridge joined the Scripture Union in 1948, working in youth ministry for decades, organizing student programs, holiday camps, and sixth form courses. He rarely spoke of the war, When pressed, he would only say, "I aim for engines, not cockpits. I wanted to stop the machine, not kill the men." His logbook remained tucked in a drawer, his medals stored in a box, forgotten relics of a past he was determined to move beyond. Skelton was ordained as an Anglican priest, serving as chaplain at Clare College, Cambridge, before becoming rector of Market Harborough. His war service rarely featured in his sermons. Instead, he focused on reconciliation, forgiveness, and the values that mattered in the aftermath of conflict. No. 100 Group was disbanded on December 17, 1945, 7 months after victory in Europe, but the electronic warfare tactics it pioneered became standard doctrine for air forces around the world, with Serrate-style radar detection and electronic countermeasures forming the backbone of modern night fighting operations. The invisible hunt had changed aerial warfare forever. The Mosquito remained in RAF service until 1951 and longer in the fleets of other nations. But the aircraft's legacy was not its longevity, it was its versatility. A bomber, a fighter, a reconnaissance plane, an intruder, one wooden airframe that outperformed its metal competitors in every role. De Havilland's gamble on building an unarmed fast bomber had evolved into one of the most effective aircraft of the Second World War. Burbridge and Skelton remained close friends until Skelton's death in 2003. They would meet occasionally, chatting about theology, family, and their shared love of flying, rarely mentioning the night of November 4th, 1944. That night belonged to history now, to the RAF, to the ground crews who waited, and to the 1,260 bomber crew members who came home because 21 German night fighters did not. Brance Burbridge passed away on November 1st, 2016, at the age of 95. By then, his medals had been sold to pay for his care. His family needed the money, and the nation had long since moved on from the war. But the record remained: 21 victories, the highest-scoring British night fighter ace of the Second World War. The invisible hunter who haunted the skies over Germany. The man who turned the Luftwaffe's own technology against them. The pilot who aimed for engines, not cockpits. His story is a testament to the power of innovation, courage, and the quiet humanity that can endure even in the darkest of times. Stories like Burbridge and Skelton's remind us that wars are not won by firepower alone. They are won by the men and women who dare to think differently, who turn the enemy's strengths into weaknesses, and who fight not for glory, but to save lives. If you found this story valuable, please like this video and subscribe for more untold war stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you for watching and for keeping these stories alive.